All right, so we got a bunch of parts in. These are all electronics in here. Let's go through what we got. I've got some of this stuff, but it's new to me. I've never used this product before, but this is sheathing for electronic sheathing, wiring sheath, so that wires and stuff can go inside this tube. And then this stuff is supposed to be cool because it shrinks. Like this almost feels like a canvas or whatever. So I could fit a whole bunch of wires in there, and then it's supposed to shrink down. And then a big one, maybe the big one, is this guy here, and this is my speedometer. And you're not gonna believe how small this thing is. This is tiny, man. Look at this compared to my hand. I mean, this is a very, very tiny speedometer, but this is the big one. This is a Motogadget one, so I went big time on this. To me, this is a high-end, very high-end speedometer. It's all digital, but these are super nice. I've never seen one in person before, and I very rarely see these on bikes. Only at bike shows do I see this sort of stuff. I got this one because it allows multiple functions. They have a smaller, an even smaller one than this that you can get, and that was my first preference, but the smaller one does very basic stuff. It shows your speed and not a whole lot else. I wanted to have a readout for my fuel tank. I wanted to be able to show me when I was in neutral, when my high beams were on, when my turn signals were on. This one does all that. It also has like your rev counter for your RPMs. And it also will show you the time on there. It shows you what gear you're in, if that's an option on your, if you have that on your bike already. And one of the cool things about this that I thought might be useful for me, and you can minimize the amount of wires that are running from your speedometer on the front of the bike to the actual main part of the bike, the frame of the bike, by use of what they call a breakout box, which is this thing here. This is also smaller than I had expected. They give you measurements on the website, but you know, having it in your hand is a whole nother thing. And so you have this little breakout box. Again, look how tiny this thing is. And this thing allows you to input several different wires from your bike and then output one wire that runs up to the speedometer for the readout. So I like that. It condenses the amount of wires. It minimizes the amount of wiring on the bike. And I'm trying to minimize the amount of wires that are running up to the front of the bike because those are kind of unsightly. All the sensors from the engine can go into this guy. My turn signals and everything can go into this guy. So all my fuel sensor, my air temperature, oil temperature, water temperature, oil pressure, my high beams, turn signals, neutral switch, error messages, they can all run into this little breakout box, and then one wire comes from here and goes up to this guy here. I am very excited about that. I'm not entirely, I've tried to do some wiring sort of pre-game sketch outs and stuff, and so I think I have a decent plan, but we'll see how that actually all comes together. We'll get into this thing in more detail later on as needed, basically, because that at this point I'm just showing you, giving you an idea of what I got. So I'm very much looking forward to that. That's going to be very professional and very, very nice looking. One of the things about any vehicle is the human interface with it, like what I'm looking at, what my hands are touching, that sort of thing, and having a nice speedometer on there. Every time I get on the bike, I'll be like, oh, I have a nice bike. And then I also got several of these, and these are relays. All right, so here's the stock one compared to the Motogadget one in terms of size. You can see it's about half the size. Like, it's literally half the size, or maybe a little bit less. So I'd like to swap these out. They've got a little like 1/4-20 sort of screw that can go into the back side of this, and that's how you mount it. So I was planning on using like a rubber washer and mounting this to some sort of panel, whatever, where I can mount them up, sort of line them up more than likely side by side. I have a row of these things in there. This guy here is a flasher relay. I'll put a link to all these things in the description, but yeah, so this is the Mo Flash, my turn signal relay. And again, the regular turn signal relay is about this size. And so you can see this thing is massively smaller. All right, I'd like to test this guy out. I mean, this is what it is outside the package. That's how you get it. It's just a couple wires going into a little tiny box. It's my understanding of how this works is that you put it in line in your power line. So the power supply coming in to your switch that goes from your left turn signals to your right turn signals will already sort of be pre-flashed. Then you just send that power to one side of the bike or the other side of the bike. So I've got a little LED light here. We hook our LED light up to constant power and we get constant light out of it, right? But if we put this guy in line before it, right? So the power line coming in, yeah, it flashes. All right, and then switching companies, we're now going to look at, I'm going to be using a bunch of Morimoto stuff. These guys make lighting for the most part. Motogadget also makes lighting, not to the extent that Morimoto does, but Motogadget does make some very nice turn signals, very similar in style to this turn signal. So these are my turn signals I'm going to be using on there. Just little tiny things, again, very small, little turn signal. Has a little bolt, attaches on, so on the bike all you're going to see is like that stuff sticking out. And these are directional. You can kind of see in here there's this little sort of beveled aspect. I've got these for the front and the back, and I've also got signals I'm going to put on the sides just for fun, because I'm a fan of these things. I've been a fan for them for years, and so this particular bike is an opportunity, I believe, to use them. We'll see how it actually all works out, but I've got these guys. Ba-boom! I pulled these off the junkyard off a BMW Z4, which is the little James Bond Roadster, the convertible sports car thing. These are a little bit broken because this lens is supposed to be attached to here, but it has, because these are so old, whatever, that the sun and whatnot has broken down the little epoxy, and these are popped off. I found them this way. Someone had already tried to take them off and broken these off and then stuck these in the trunk, and I found them and then pulled this off the side of the car. I'm going to use these. They're missing the bulb. I've got some LED bulbs to stick in there, and then I'm probably not going to be using this part here. And then my tail light, again, a Morimoto product. This is called the Morimoto Mod Pod. And these things are kind of interesting. I'm using it, it's not really designed to be a taillight necessarily. It's designed to be sort of an accessory light, indicator light of whatever you want, basically. They come in different styles, different sort of capacities, where I've got a sort of, what do they call this, a dual intensity one, and that's why I can use this for a tail and brake light all in one little light. I mean, look at how tiny this is. And it's very nice. It's all aluminum construction. It has like it said, it's dual intensity. It's got 3 wires in the back. One's a ground, one is one intensity, one is another intensity. So you can have 2 power lines coming in here, and one being a running light, which will be on all the time. And then when you apply the brake, it will brighten it up even more. And then on the other end, the headlight, this is a product that I discovered. I found this thing through searching the world's internet. And again, this is a Morimoto product. All of my lights are from Morimoto because they seem to make good products, but they're not crazy expensive. So again, this is my headlight. This is the Sealed Beam 3 that I'm using here. It's Pretty nice little headlight there. It's again a dual intensity. This is supposed to be a headlight. It has both a low beam and a high beam. This should be very cool. This by itself should be very bright. And then we're not done, because even though that headlight by itself will probably be adequate and probably be much better than the stock light, especially on the original VFR light, it should be a lot nicer. I tried it on my CB500 there, where I added these auxiliary lights and I wired it up so that when I turn on the high beams, all these like floodlights come on as well. And boy, I like that. That is nice. That's a nice feature to have. So I want to do the same thing on this bike, and I want to step it up a bit. So again, we've got Morimoto product. This is what they call their one banger, which is just auxiliary lights they would use for basically anything, any kind of application. These guys are cool because you can take this lens out. You can swap this lens out with a different lens. And so I ordered, they come in a set. I've got 2 of them. I ordered the set, so it's got like a wide beam on there. So the beam pattern, when it comes out, it should be wide and sort of flat and cover a lot of ground off to the sides and everything. And then I ordered just a lens, this guy here, so I can swap out the lens on one of these to a different type of lens. So you can see the lens is completely different, the pattern on this. I'm going to swap out one of them so that it will be, this is a spot, so it will go further, much further in theory, according to the pictures and stuff on their website. The spotlight will go much further out into the distance and illuminate things further down the road, whereas this thing will spread out and illuminate things off to the side of the road. My thought there is that I don't want to hit a deer, you know, and this will help me with that. All right, so I would like to sort of start planning out my electronics and the spacing and everything on here. So I'd like to set this side, the lights and stuff inside an aluminum box. But basically we're gonna start taking this bike apart, moving all the electronics around on it. Space for this guy, space for both of these guys. I'm gonna line them up sort of side by side, and this is gonna be like one of those sort of off-center headlight bikes. Headlights, and then the Speedo. It's got to go in here as well somewhere. All right, so my first step here is really trying to eliminate as much as I can from up front here. And this is the one thing I definitely want to relocate this or eliminate this. But yeah, this guy is the bank angle sensor, or the tip over sensor, and it is a big chunky thing on this VFR. This is some early technology in terms of bank angle sensors. The ones in later bikes, like on my CB500 and the Grom, are much smaller than this. But this should be bypassable. I think on these earlier versions they were simpler and easier to bypass. All right, so I have a couple different thoughts on this bank angle sensor. I could swap it out for a smaller, newer version. They also seem to be 3-wire versions. I don't know if they work exactly the same though. I could shrink this one. You could also bypass it. Supposedly you connect the red wire to the green wire here, and that will allow the bike to run. The red wire comes from one of the relays in the back there, an engine stop relay, and that power comes through that up to here, and then through here to ground, and then that allows the bike to start. There's the wire in the middle, this white one, this is white and black. This one it comes from the fuse panel, basically. So there's power coming to this all the time, and this white one in theory, but I don't know why, and I don't exactly know what that does inside the bank. It's supplying power. Does this have to be energized to work? Like, I don't really know what's going on with that. That seems to be the only thing it could be doing, but I'd like to test this. I want this one in the middle. Shouldn't have power right now. Should not. theory, turn this on. Now it does. Yeah, there's power coming to this switch at all times. I don't know, but you could also tell that when this is unplugged and I turn the bike on, no power to the fuel pump because that circuit is broken there. In theory, if we bypass that guy, jumper wire to do that, like this, then our fuel pump should come on. Yeah. So yeah, it's a simple bypass on this thing. Do I want to bypass it? No, not essentially. Like, this is supposed to be a functional daily driver type of bike is what I want this to be. And I would like it to be, to turn off if it fell over. I'm gonna look into getting a smaller bank angle sensor. The wiring is where stuff starts to get complex. I've got to strip back this main wiring harness so I can take wires off of that and possibly add wires onto it. I've got to reroute a bunch of wires, that's for sure. And I've got to reference the stock wiring diagram for the VFR. I've got to reference the wiring diagrams for the new components that are going on here, the speedo specifically. I've also got to build a box here for all the headlights and things to go in. We've got to make the body for the bike, essentially all the shell, whatever that goes around it. We've got to figure out how that's going to be. So I'm probably just going to do a bunch of stuff and I'll bring you back and give you updates along the way of what I've done. To try and wrap my head around what I'm doing, I have pre-gamed this thing and mapped out a whole bunch of stuff, and this is just some of the things. This is not the entire wiring harness. Here's the entire wiring harness. So I got this printed out as well. This will help me as a reference. I'm going to start by removing this wiring harness, all the stuff from the front, and pull it back through the rest of the bike. Here we are so far. I got everything off the front and it's about midway down. I still need to disconnect a bunch of stuff. Sensors on the left side of the bike here. That's it. The entire wiring harness is off the bike. You must tear it down before you can build it back up, Hoopty-san. Alright, so this is the front end, and this is the rear end. These big chunkers here, this one and this one here are both go to the stock Speedo. And so we want to get rid of these, or we're going to be moving these, eliminating a lot of the stuff on here. So I'm just going to start at the front, because the front is where Alright, this is where I'm at. I've got mainly the front part of it unwound for the most part, so that we can at least see where the wires are running. I've got a couple things separated out, like again our big chunker things that went to the original Speedo. Just sort of separating out stuff that I want to relocate and move. But just FYI, like if you've never taken a wire loom apart, one of the interesting things is that in order to protect this thing pretty well, I mean the factory does a good job, they wrap them. I've got a whole box of these, and this is pretty heavy, flexible plastic, it's pretty heavy duty, and they put that everywhere, where there's like little pieces everywhere along here where they stuck this stuff and then wrapped it, and this protects the wires really well. Alright, we're slowly getting through things. I've been pulling wires out, like these two here, these go to the speedometer. I'm pulling them out each wire at a time, depinning it from its connector, labeling it, figuring out where it goes, trying to sort it out of the wiring loom as best I can, and sticking it back in here in the same order so that I don't lose track of it. So now we're at the point where I'm color coding stuff. I've got different colors here, the blue and the green, to indicate to me at a glance that one wire is now being reassigned to the speedometer, and one wire is being reassigned to the breakout box for the speedometer. The breakout box is going to live sort of under the seat of the bike, and the speedometer of course will be up near the front of the bike, and so I need to separate out wires from the original speedometer to those two separate components. Alright, so now I've got a battery hooked up back here where it would normally be on the wire loom. I've got the Speedo, the stock Speedo, hooked back in here. Basically, and I've got the key, where the key would normally be right here. And if I jump this, I can get power to the Speedo. I'm just testing, because what I want to do is be able to take out the stock Speedo and plug in the new Speedo and see if we can power it up. All right, so I'd like to be able to see how the Speedo works on the stock one and be able to transfer that information onto the new Speedo. And so I've grabbed the actual Speedo sensor, the speed sensor off the bike, and we can plug that in. And this is fun because it's sort of like, all of a sudden this starts to feel like one of those like science kits that all the rich kids had. The way this speed sensor works is it literally hooks up to the bolt on the front sprocket of the chain that the final drive of the engine, basically. And so I found a bolt of the same sort of has the same head size on there, and bam. Now we stick this into our drill, and now I can make the bike run, so to speak. And we get a speed reading. So this should be cool. That was 70 miles an hour. So yeah, the point of this is that I want to start to play with the wires. If I unplug certain wires, like this pink one, which is what I think is the main speed signal coming in. The Motogadget speedometer only has one signal, one wire. Only has one wire coming in for the signal. So I want to pull this pink wire and see if we still get a speed readout or not. Readout is coming on. All the lights and the dash and everything are coming on. So I've got my pink wire unplugged. Let's see if we get a speed readout or not. Nothing. Sweet. And the ECM, the computer, is not attached at all. So you can get a speed readout just straight from the speed sensor. Alright, I now want to test out the actual Motogadget Speedo according to the instruction manual to make sure that it's working. Alright, readout. It's supposed to say like Motogadget. Alright, so that's supposed to work. Tap green wire to ground, and that should change the menus. Trip A, trip B, odometer, time, volt, acceleration, percent speed, RPM, 0 to 100, RPM, accelerating, life, clock, speed, trip A, trip B. Sweet, so those are sort of the menu things, and then you can dive into them more. So there's a menu button I have to wire in, and that's what we were just playing with. Tap white wire to ground, and that should show some speed. Well, that's pretty cool. That changed. And then tap yellow wire, and that should show the tach, the RPMs. Oh, tachometer happening. Something's happening. Awesome. Alright, I'm happy with that. I'm going to disconnect things. So that's supposed to be working. That's what it's supposed to do. We have now verified that our Motogadget works correctly. Alright, so I'm hooking up this pink wire from the bike that goes to the speed sensor on the bike to the white wire on our Motogadget. Speed readout. Alright, I've now got a little momentary button here, so that's a button that it only works when it's being pushed, and when you release it, it stops working. And what I'm trying to do here is get the menu button set up on here so that I can select on the menu and change the speed parameter, because there's a way to sort of filter it, they call it, but adapt this thing to Setup screen, yes. All right. Screen 1, parameter. There we go. Clock. I want F. Input F. I want to do that one. We'll switch it to B. Let's see if that works. All right, let's see. That's still way high. All right, so I cannot adjust this speedometer using its little onboard filters to make it work at the same, anywhere close to the same speed reading that was on the stock speedometer, because I could max out that drill at about 70. It was, you know, around the 70 mark, and that drill is really humming. Whereas on this thing, it gets to 70 like right at the beginning, and it goes like 300. The other option is that I think later on, when the bike is actually running, there's a mode on here for teaching it the speed, where you have to go and ride the bike and keep it at a steady speed for like 5 seconds, and then it will actually go through a sequence on here and learn the speed, and then it can do all its calculations. It basically will reset some sort of parameter on the computer on here that will set a base parameter, and then it can base everything else off of that. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and disconnect or unplug all these wires from our old Speedo. I'm gonna start disconnecting wires or moving stuff. All right, so then in the middle of our wiring loom, this is just an example of something maybe interesting. This is our turn signal. This is the left turn signal, the orange. That's pretty standard for Honda. And then we have this light blue. That's the right turn signal. These are also, those are standard. Every Honda I've ever had has this color code on it. They sort of patch them together right here in the middle of the wiring loom. This one runs to the rear turn signal in the back. One wire runs to the front turn signal. And we've got a wire coming from the switch, the turn switch on the handlebars, and then another one going to the dash. And that's the one I just disconnected the one from the dash, which is this guy. So I need to rerun this stuff. I'm gonna take this apart actually and see how these are wired together. Previous bikes I've worked on, they just have like a little clamp in there, and that's how they wire them together. That's how they do it here too. Go ahead and I'm gonna cut this wire out of here and redo this section here, and then I'm gonna move my connection down to here. I'm gonna cut this open and splice in a wire over here. And I want to pull out my one piece here, this guy. Removing that one, and then these guys get connected back together again. And I've got a bunch of these little, it's the same sort of thing that Honda was using, little crimpers. What do they call them? Yeah, crimp connections. There, and that's a decent connection by itself, but I'm gonna solder it just to make me feel good, because it's gonna go in that wiring harness, and I don't ever want to have to dig that out. If I, you know, flux, my friend, is the key to a good connection, or an easy, well, it's the key to some good soldering, that's for sure. Now I've got a super connection here. And then I just throw this heat shrink over the top of it. Shrink this sucker down. All right, now where does that wire go? Well, now we've cut it off down there. And I'm gonna put it over here. And this is all, you can see this is where the actual battery hooks up. And so that's underneath the seat, that's where we want to be. I want to put it in the same general area coming off of there. This is the wire that we cut it off of. Just, this is the one on its way to the tail light down there. So I'm going to splice into this thing and do the same sort of style connection right there. All right, so I think it's about ready to go back on the bike, essentially, for another test fit. I've got everything relocated that I'm going to relocate at this point, and I'm just waiting on, I got a new battery coming that's smaller than that one. I've got a new regular rectifier to pair with that new battery because they're lithium, and that's kind of what you have to do. So I'm waiting for that stuff to show up. I'm waiting for my electrical connectors. I ordered some waterproof electrical connectors to show up, and I'm hoping that that gives me what I need to be able to start fitting everything up on the bike. And I think my next phase, though, before I even move this wiring harness back on, is going to be the subframe on here, getting that sorted out, getting that built out so that we know where all the little electrical components are going to fit. And in the same vein, we need to know where all the headlights and everything are going to fit up here and how they're going to fit. What else is going to fit up there with them, the speedo, etc. And then we'll know where the wires have to run to and how long they have to be. And so my next step is going to be fabricating all this stuff to make headlights work and make subframes work and batteries work.